When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home, I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. When night makes the tall grass bend into leaves, suddenly the raindrops that fall, they have a meaning, sprinkling the sea makes it all clean. Maybe there's a chance for me to go back now that I have some direction. Maybe there's a chance. It sure would be nice to be back at home where there's love and affection. And just maybe I can convince time to slow up, giving me enough time, ooh, in my life to grow up. Time be my friend and let me start again. Suddenly my world's gone and changed its face, but I still know where I'm going. I have had my mind spun around in space again, watched it growing. And oh, if the unlistening God, please don't make it hard to know if we should believe the things that we see. Tell us, should we try and stay, or should we run away? Or would it be better just to let things be? Oh, living here in this brand new world might be a fantasy, but it's taught me to love, yeah. So it's real, it's so real, it's real to me. And all the life that we must look inside our hearts to find a world full of love, like yours and like mine, like
You know what this represents?
Tell us, sir.
Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
We have the world's great military people in this room, I will tell you that. And we'll have a great evening. Thank you all for coming.
What storm is this represent?
You'll find out.
Give us a hint of your answers.
Thank you, everybody.
At least 58 people now dead, more than 500 people wounded in a horrific shooting on the Las Vegas Strip. It's the deadliest mass shooting in modern United States history.
I need to take a video. No, you're good.
And you can hear it there, sustained automatic gunfire at the concert.
We got shots fired, 4:15 ASF. Route 291, sounded like an automatic firearm. Upstairs from Mandalay Bay, halfway up. I see the shots coming from Mandalay Bay, halfway up.
Control, this is CP, just advising there are people down on stage left.
We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the fairgrounds.
Well, hello, everyone. Here we are again in the aftermath of another terrible, inexplicable Shocking and painful tragedy, this time in Las Vegas, which happens to be my hometown and Cleto's hometown, Cleto Sr.'s hometown. And as you know, at least 59 people are dead. Hundreds of people were wounded in what they say was the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history, coming about a year and a half after the previous deadliest mass shooting in modern American history in Orlando, where 49 people lost their lives. And
tonight, residents living in this small Texas town stunned, trying to make sense of what's described as a Sunday service massacre.
It was rapid fire. It was just boom, 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 boom.
In front of the church. In front of the church.
What if you've been in the media, we know that this morning there was another shooting in Santa Fe, Mexico, which is a city outside of Galveston, Texas. And I've heard that there's between 8 or 10 students that have lost their lives once again. And I know it was yesterday or the day before, there was a young man that went into a school not too far outside of Chicago limits. And I don't believe anybody got shot, but he did go in there with a gun or was going to, shoot. And it did not happen. And the main thing that I always see after these events take place on Facebook is gun control, gun control, gun control. When are we going to have it? When are we going to institute a gun control? And I'm going to say that you never are going to have gun control, because the reality is, what has made white America great? What has made white America the most powerful nation up to this point in the world? Guns. How did we take this land? Guns. How have we kept this land? Guns. What does President Trump want to do? He wants to set up now a space army for control. And so you cannot take away the very thing that has made my white family who they are. So we overlook what even Jesus said, Yeshua, that if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So because white America has been living by the sword, and they have fought all the battles and victories due with the sword, if you take the sword away from my white family, they are left vulnerable. And so we again will sacrifice our own in these school shootings to maintain what we need to maintain, which is control. And so I'm labeling this as it is our season, white America, white evangelical Gentiles, to begin to reap everything we have sown for at least the past 400 years.
As you can imagine, it is a challenging, difficult morning. George is on the scene in Florida, where another community is in disbelief, shocked by devastating violence, this time at that Florida high school on Valentine's Day.
This image, one that has become all too familiar. Students evacuating with their hands up.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good evening, and we come on the air at this hour because we are following developments out of Manchester, England. Reports of an explosion at an Ariana Grande concert at the Manchester Arena there, one of the largest arenas, in fact, in Europe. And
as the storm lingers over Texas, the attention now turns to the dangerous rain. Remnants of Harvey are dumping up to 6 inches of rain an hour, and it will not be over anytime soon.
It's a serious storm. It's going to last 4 or 5 days, and quite frankly, this is day one.
The National Weather Service has issued a flash flood emergency for catastrophic, life-threatening flooding for portions of Brazoria, Fort Bend, and Harris counties, including the city of Houston.
This is what the opioid crisis looks like in America. A driver and a passenger slumped over in a Ford Explorer. In the back seat, the driver's 4-year-old grandson waiting for someone to show up and help. The adults in the car had overdosed on heroin.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are coming on the air with breaking news: a mass shooting at an e-gaming tournament. It happened this afternoon in Jacksonville, Florida. Multiple people are dead, several more injured. And the sheriff there, Michael Williams, just briefed reporters at a news conference. He says there was one suspect, and that suspect is now dead. Let's go.
Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword.
This is a never-ending nightmare. Let me show you what we're seeing from our vantage point. This is where all of the lava is coming from. This is actually 5 fissures combined.
You can take a look at this one time lapse that we have now of the lava cascading across the street and basically devouring a car. It almost looks like that old movie, The Blob, the way it's coming out and just taking over the road.
Revelation 16 verse 4, and the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. Where else have we heard of bodies of water turning to blood? Exodus chapter 7, when Pharaoh refused to let the children of Israel go, the Lord turned bodies of water in Egypt to actual blood.
A severe plague of locusts.
And you can tell that people around here really love their birds. You'll see feeders like this hanging outside many homes in this area. So to see these birds literally dropping from the sky has a lot of people really worried, not just about the birds, but also about their own health.
They were flying across the sky and they just fell out of the sky. One just fell right in front of me, and it was, you know, it's scary. You know, with my child running around in the backyard playing, and I mean, there's birds everywhere.
I've lived here 20 years and I have never in my life ever seen birds falling out of the sky like this.
Every morning I go out and check the yard, and I would normally find maybe like 3 a week, and I'm finding 8 to 10 to 12 a day now.
In front of several homes, the sad sight of a mountain of mangled feathers, all dead doves swept up into a heap by those living here.
An opioid epidemic is ravaging parts of this country. President Trump has declared it a public health emergency. Last year, overdoses killed some 64,000 people. It's being compared to the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s and 90s. The face of the opioid epidemic has been mostly white.
U.S. middle-aged white Americans with relatively low education are experiencing rising mortality from alcoholism, drug addiction, and suicide. Now, that's all at the same time that every other racial and ethnic group somehow has decreased, but this has increased. So something has gone terribly wrong.
Death rates of white middle-aged adults in the United States, which is the largest population group in the U.S., have been rising after declining for decades. And they are using government health statistics, death certificates, and other economic indicators. And they have pointed out that mortality rates for white people are getting worse.
Effective today, my administration is officially declaring the opioid crisis a national public health emergency under federal law, and why I am directing all executive agencies to use every appropriate emergency authority to fight the opioid crisis. This marks a critical step in confronting the extraordinary challenge that we face.
The epidemic continues to sweep across the country. A group in Seattle wants to set up safe houses to give addicts a place to shoot up with supervision.
When there was a drug issue in the African American community, we were prosecuted, we were put in jail, children were put in foster care, families were ripped apart. It was treated like a criminal justice issue. We had Rockefeller drug laws. Our jails were filled with men and women that looked just like me as people from the 43rd Assembly District. But now, we have an opiate issue. It is affecting another demographic, and now it is a health issue. And now we have to put money into diverting individuals from prison into treatment.
And the Lord will take away from thee all sickness, and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt which thou knowest upon thee, but will lay them upon all them that hate thee.
Hello, my name is Tyrone Crawford. The messages that you are about to hear are the most important and the most urgent messages unequivocally that you will ever hear in your lifetime. The events that will be revealed through these teachings will directly and some indirectly affect you, your family, and your friends. Regardless of your race, age, social status, education, financial status, gender, or religious affiliations. What you are currently witnessing in these record-breaking storms and hurricanes that have affected thousands upon thousands to this very day, and that will affect many more in the future, you will come to understand is not by chance. The crisis in Syria, the tensions between Iran, Russia, America, China, North Korea, the people who are currently trampling the land of Israel today, and very soon, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. While all of these appear to be separate events, they are not. They are divinely linked and intertwined altogether. Now I need you to take note of this one fact. When the children of Israel was captive in the land of Mizraim, or Kemet, as it was actually called during that time, according to scripture, the name Egypt actually means land of bondage, which is why the Most High warned them that he would send them back into Egypt again, but this time by ships, if they forsook the agreed upon covenant. They would not need ships to return to Kemet or Mizraim, so this would be a different land of bondage that they nor their fathers had known or ever heard of according to the scriptures. But this is what I need you to take note of. The plagues or judgments did not begin to occur until it was time for the children of Israel to leave the land of their captivity. It was then that the writer observed water that appeared to him to be blood. It was then that the writer observed thousands of flying locusts. It was then that the Most High began to kill many of the land's own people. So if Israel is already back in the land now, why would these plagues or judgments be returning now? And according to his word, this time, the judgments will increase until this Egypt is totally annihilated. Man nor beast will be able to dwell there ever again. Now there are those who will say falsely that Israel is no longer a nation of people, but is now the church, or all Christians. But they ignore the fact that the disciples who were Israelites themselves were and are to this very day the church, the true church. In fact, they were instructed in Matthew the 10th chapter and the 5th verse to avoid the Gentiles and go not to them. And to make this even more abundantly clear, listen to what the Most High says in Jeremiah the 31st chapter and verses 35 through 37. Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and the stars for a light by night, which divide the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith the Lord, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Lord. So are the sun, moon, and stars still in the heavens? Have you been able to measure the heavens or the earth's foundation? Well then, this could only mean one thing. These people who have been scattered as slaves throughout the earth by way of ships are still to this very day his chosen people. And no, it's not racism, it's his word. Are you now starting to understand Jeremiah the 16th chapter and the 19th verse, which says, that the Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers, those same forefathers who love statues of themselves and rename nations after themselves, the descendants of these Gentiles shall come to thee and say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. God calls them the Israelites, a peculiar people, because what they would experience during their time in captivity, no other people on the face of the whole earth would experience. A people without a homeland to call their own, because they were taken far from their borders. A people who would lose their true identity and be referred to by many different names, all negative. A people that will forget a covenant that only their forefathers entered into with the Creator of all of heaven and earth. They are a people who are currently existing in sackcloth and ashes, though the true God of heaven and earth calls them his royal priests. Because in reality, unbeknownst to them and to most of the nations of the world, they are the true royalty. In fact, the earth was made for them. So now again, the obvious question should be, if God's chosen people are scattered throughout the earth, who are the people in the land calling themselves not Israelites, but Israelis? The true Messiah of these people addresses this in Revelations, the 2nd chapter and the 9th verse, meaning the true Messiah of the Israelites. Here he is revealing to the true people of Israel today in their current state and condition. He says, I know your affliction and your poverty, though you are rich. See, what you need to understand is Israel today, they don't realize this yet, that they are rich, that they are royal priesthood. But they are about to find out in the very near future. And he goes on to say, and I am aware of the slander of those who falsely claim to be, it says Jews, but the correct term would be Igbo. they were of the Igbo tribe, or Igbo. The name used today would be Hebrew, but are in fact a synagogue of Satan, he says. He speaks again concerning this abomination over in Revelation, the 3rd chapter and the 9th verse. He says, "Look at those who belong to the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Igbo, but are liars instead. I will make them come and bow down at your feet, and they will know that I love you." Another obvious question should be, where does Christianity fit in all of this? Well, in Romans the 12th chapter, Paul was not speaking to Christians or Muslims or Buddhists or any other religious organizations. He was addressing Gentiles, those who were not of the 12 tribes of Israel. The people of Antioch were a pagan people who worshiped pagan gods. It was in Antioch that the disciples were first called Christians. They did not refer to themselves as Christians, the disciples that is. Christianity evolved through the Roman Catholic Church and Constantine the emperor. When the Messiah came, many of the 12 tribes were already scattered. However, they were not scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth, nor were they taken as slaves on ships. When the Messiah came, he revealed in Matthew the 15th chapter and the 24th verse that he was sent only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. What Christianity and all religions have done is exactly what Paul warned them against in the 12th chapter of Romans. And that was to not boast themselves against the true natural branches. And those natural branches would be the tribes of Israel. Therefore, the nations of the world are shaking today, and this shaking is only going to increase because the children of those slaves that were scattered throughout the earth are about to be taken out of their captivity and returned back to their own land, and not through governmental involvement, but by a mighty hand, a stretched out arm, and fury poured out. In order to attempt to lay down some sort of foundation for what you are about to hear and view, I need to introduce you to the father of this nation of people who are called Israel. His name is Jacob. In Hebrew, or more adequately, Igbo, it is Jacob. It would be through Isaac's second-born son that the inheritance or blessings would come through. And that inheritance included a kingdom and dominion. The Most High himself changed Jacob's name to Israel. In the latter days, when the Messiah appears, and at the conclusion of their personal tribulations, they, his descendants, would receive the kingdom and dominion, not in heaven, but right here on earth. Scripture tells us that these who were scattered over the earth as slaves by ships would be redeemed and regathered by the Most High himself, and not by man or any Balfour declaration. Once again, he says he will accomplish this by a mighty hand, a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out. In other words, through much destruction to the nations who scattered them, enslaved them, and to this very day continue to persecute and hold them captive in their land. The nations who conspired against them, as recorded in Psalm 83, God is now turning them against one another. And now their great tribulation is about to begin. You see, judgment must first begin in the house of God, and so it did. The southern kingdom and the northern kingdoms are God's house. The judgment is now coming to its end. And according to Joel chapter 3, verse 9, the true priests and prophets of the Most High of Israel has been instructed to proclaim to all the nations, prepare for war. Awake all of your mighty men, and let them come near, saith the Lord of hosts. I pray that these teachings will give you knowledge and true understanding concerning the times to shortly come. May the Most High of Israel be with you and your family.